The chanting of Hare Krishna is one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in Vedas as spiritual activity Karmakanda. 9. To instruct a faithless person about the glories of the holy name. 10. To not to have a complete faith in chanting of the holy name and to maintain material attachment even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must guard against these offenses in order to achieve the desired success of Krishna Prema. Once again, I thank everyone for joining today's Bhakti Sangha Japa conference call. Let us move on to our next part of the session, which is Srimad Bhagavatam class. May I know who all joined this morning?
Hare Krishna, Vinita Gandharvika Mataji, Dandrat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Guru Maharaj ki Jai, Priti Dasi from Charlotte. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Priti Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Mataji, for joining and giving your sweet association. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Mataji. This is Kamodiki Dasi from Baltimore. Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj, and all the devotees. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Komadiki Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Mataji, for joining and giving your sweet association. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Thank you.
Nitai Gauranga Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Gurudev. Hare Krishna. This is Hari Radha from Fairfax, Virginia, US. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Shri Hari Radha Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Mataji, for joining and giving your sweet association every day. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandrat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Guru Maharaj ki Jai. This is Arvindaksha from Chicago. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Arvindaksha Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for joining every day and giving your sweet association. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Vinita
Krishna.
Gandharvika Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharajas, and all glories to the assembled devotees. This is Tiffany in Pennsylvania. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Tiffany Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Mataji, for joining and giving your association every day. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Vinita Gandharvika Mataji. This is Megha from Naperville. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga, and to all the assembled devotees here. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Megha Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Mataji, for joining and giving your association. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandrat Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to the assembled devotees. Yashamati from Chicago.
Hare Krishna, Yeshumati Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Mataji, for joining and giving your sweet association every day in all calls, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Gomadiki Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you, Mataji, for joining and giving your sweet association. Nice to see you, Mataji. Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna, Vinita Gandharvika Mataji, all glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. My humble obeisances to you and all the devotees. This is Krishna Kumari Dasi from Radha.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Kumari Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Mataji, for joining and giving your sweet association. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Vinita Gandharvika Mataji, Dandrat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada, Shri Guru Maharaj. Shama Priti Dasi from Charlotte.
Hare Krishna, Shama Gauri Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Mataji, for joining and giving your sweet association. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Vinita Gandharvika Mataji, Dandrat Pranam to you and all Vaishnava. Srila Prabhupada Gurudev ki Jai, Pinda.
Hare Krishna, Vrinda Gopika Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Mataji, for joining and giving your sweet association. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandvat Pranam, all glories to Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj, all glories to assembled devotee. This is Mohini Lakshmi from Detroit.
Hare Krishna, Mohini Lakshmi Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Mataji, for joining and giving your sweet association. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Mataji, beautiful setup, you know. Nice Narsingadev and Bhakti Sangha logo and sari and everything. So good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Thank you for your sweet words.
Hare Krishna Vinita Gandharvika Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and all the assembled devotees. This is Induleka Karna Devi Dasi from Lincoln.
Hare Krishna, Induleka Karna Mataji, Dhanavad Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Mataji, for joining and giving us sweet association. Hare Krishna. Is there anybody who would like to introduce themselves before we start recording? I see Prabhuji already on the call. Hare Krishna, I welcome everybody to Bhakti Sangha Japa conference call. Today we are very fortunate to have His Grace Balaram Shakti Prabhu to enlighten us on the topic of Srimad Bhagavatam 5th Canto, Chapter 18, verse 31. Before I hand over the call to Prabhuji, I would like to hand over it to Tiffany Mataji for the brief introduction. Hare Krishna, Tiffany Mataji, over to you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. His Grace Balaram Shakti Prabhuji is a brahmachari devotee connected to ISKCON Chowpatty. He completed his BE in metallurgical engineering from NIT Tiruchirappalli in 2002. Thereafter, he joined Pennsylvania State University and graduated with a PhD in material science in 2007. While at Pennsylvania State University, he took up Krishna consciousness as the member of the Penn State Vedic Society. While at Penn State, he also was mentored by His Grace Yugal Kishore Prabhuji. And after he moved back to India, he chose to become a full-time monk at Radha Gopinath Mandir. In May 2010, after his brahmachari training, he moved to Govardhan Eco Village and served full-time until December of 2021. He is currently in Chennai assisting his aged parents, and he is an extremely erudite scholar of the Vaishnava scriptures, and he travels far and wide teaching these books and gives many, many beautiful classes on Zoom. He is also currently engaged in teaching many of these books online on Zoom, so please, find him if you can. And he is a disciple of His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you so much for that brief introduction. Hare Krishna Prabhuji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much Prabhuji for joining and giving your valuable time and association this morning. We are really very fortunate to have you on the call as always with your beautiful PPTs. And please take over the call Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you very much. So let us start. Thank you all very much for joining today's session, and thank you to the Bhakti Sangha organizers for giving me an opportunity to share some thoughts and from Srimad Bhagavatam. So, Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namini Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So today we are reading from the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 18th chapter, 31st verse. So we will read the verse and translation, and then we'll read the purport and see what we can learn from today's verse. So, okay. I'll chant the verse and then the translation. Yadrupametan nijamayayarpitam arthaswarupam bahurupa rupitam sankyanayasya ayato palambhanat tasmai namaste vyapadesha rupine. So this chapter we are reading actually prayers by the residents of the various varshas, and here the prayer is offered to the form of kurma, the tortoise, I think. Yeah. So here Srila Prabhupada translates, "My dear Lord, this visible cosmic manifestation is a demonstration of your creative energy. Since the countless varieties of forms within this cosmic manifestation are simply a display of your external energy, this Virat Roop or the universal body is not your real form. Except for a devotee in transcendental consciousness, no one can perceive your actual form. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. This is the translation. Let's read the purport. Srila Prabhupada writes, Mayavadi philosophers think the universal form of the Lord to be real and his personal form illusory. We can understand their mistake by a simple example. Prabhupada says how we can understand their misconception. A fire consists of three elements: heat and light, which are the energy of the fire and the fire itself. So, which is energy and the energetic, right? Anyone can understand that the original fire is the reality and that the heat and light are simply fire's energy, right? So, heat and light are the formless energies of fire, and in that sense, they are unreal. Unreal in the sense you can't really, see them, or they don't have an independent existence other than fire in one sense, right? Only the fire has form, and therefore it is the real form of heat and light. As Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita, Maya tatam idam sarvam jagad avyakta murtina. By me in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. Thus, the impersonal conception of the Lord is like the expansion of heat and light from a fire. So there is a fire has a form, but the energies of heat and light, they don't have a form. Similarly, the God has a form, but his energies may not necessarily have form. That's what he is indicating here. Then Prabhupada says in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord also says, Matstani sarvabhutani nachaham teshu avastitah. The entire material creation is resting on Krishna's energy, either material, spiritual, or marginal. But because his form is absent from the expansion of his energy, he is not personally present. He pervades in the form of his energies, right? This inconceivable expansion of the Supreme Lord's energy is called as Achintya Shakti. Therefore, no one can understand the real form of the Lord without becoming his devotee. Okay. So, this is the verse and the purport. So, today we will be discussing two themes, hopefully, Krishna willing. I am just hoping that, Krishna expands in the time. Okay. So, the first section that we'll be discussing about is, because in this verse, he's talking about the universal form. So, we will see that in Bhagavatam only, in this starting from second canto has just 10 chapters, but spread across those 10 chapters, there are 3 descriptions of the universal form spread across 5 chapters. So which means 50% of second canto, there is at least some description of universal form, right? But even though they look very similar in their description, but Bhagavatam is not mindlessly repeating these presentations. There is a purpose behind these descriptions. So we will try to take the second canto descriptions of the universal form very briefly. Please don't worry, I'm not going to describe the universal form in this whole class. I'm sure if I say that, most of you may drop out of the call. So I'm telling you beforehand, this is a very small section that I'm going to do. Just briefly, just to give you an idea that Srimad Bhagavatam is not needlessly redundant here. There is a different purpose for different descriptions of the universal form. We will briefly touch this because it is the next theme in which I'm a little bit more interested to discuss. Okay. So I will try to keep this little short and quick. So the first description of the universal form comes in the first chapter of second canto, where Srila Shukadeva Goswami speaks about two different types of yogis who achieve liberation. The first kind of yogi is one whose heart is fairly cleansed of material desires. So such a person is qualified to meditate on the Paramatma form, on the super soul form of the Lord. And then by meditating on the super soul form, he attains liberation. This is called a Sadhyo Mukti, or instant liberation. Whereas there are a lower grade of yogis whose heart is not cleansed. They still hold on to some material desires. And such devotees, such yogis are recommended to meditate on the universal form of the Lord. So if you have to meditate on the universal form, you cannot see the universal form because it's an imaginary form. So even though it's an imaginary form, that imaginary form has some utility. So we will just little bit later, we will try to understand how the universal form is imaginary, in what sense. So in order to, even though the universal form is imaginary, but the yogi cannot imagine any form to achieve success in his practice of yoga. So therefore, there is a very specific description of the universal form that is given in the Shastras. So the first description of the universal form in the second canto is to describe to such a yogi what is a bona fide meditation on the universal form. Okay. So in the second canto, Srila Parikshit Maharaj asked this question: Yatha sandharyate brahman dharana yatra sammata yadrishiva harer ashu purushasya manomalam. So he says, I will go through the whole thing, but one of the questions that Parikshit Maharaj asks is, Dharana yatra sammata. What is the approved object of concentration? What should the yogi meditate upon? So this question was asked, and Srila Shukadeva Goswami says, Jitashano, Jitashwaso, Jitasango, Jitendriyaha, Stule Bhagavato Rupe Manaha Sandaraye Dhya. He says, Stule Bhagavato Rupe. Stule Bhagavato Rupe means one should meditate on the gross form of the Lord. So this gross form of the Lord is the universal form. Okay. What is this universal form? There is a description. Okay. I will just read the translation directly. Okay. This description is there so that the yogi knows what he should meditate on. He cannot imagine any form and meditate on that. Right. So he says, within the universal shell made of 7 layers exists the universal form, the Lord, who is the object of dharana. The object of meditation for this yogi whose heart is not yet cleansed is this form of the universal form. Okay. And there is a description of this universal form, what he should meditate on. Patala are his soles, Rasatala is his heels, Mahatala is his ankles, Talatala is his calves. You know how the 14 planetary systems are there in various bodily parts, and how the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas Brahmanosam asid bahu rajanyah kratah urvor tadasya yadvaishya padbyam shudro ajayata. Like that, there are, how the four varnas, they, they are the various bodily parts, like that, there is a description. So that the yogi knows what he should meditate upon. I will not go over the rest of the description. This is, how the devatas such as Indra are his arms, the devatas of the directions, and the organ for hearing arise from his ears, sound arises from his organ of hearing, the Ashwinis and the organ for smelling arise from his nostrils, and so on. So basically, this is a description of the universal form to aid the yogi to aid the yogi in his meditation. So this is the first description of the universal form. Then we always hear that the universal form is an imaginary form like that. So now the question is the universal form really imaginary? If yes, then how? Okay, let's see that. What does Srimad Bhagavatam say? In the second canto, 5th chapter, during the second description of the universal form, there is this description. Yasyeha vayavair lokan kalpayanti manishinaha katyadebir adas sapta saptordvam jaganadibihi. Says, within this universe, kalpayanti manishinaha. Manishinaha means wise people. Kalpayanti. Kalpayanti means they imagine the planets as his limbs, right? And then in later verses it is mentioned, Bhurloka kalpita padbyam bhuvarlokosya nabitah Trida swarloka urasa maharloko mahatmanaha. Bhurlokaha, again the word kalpitaha is used. From the feet to the hips, the planets from Patala to earth are imagined, right? And again, Bhurloka kalpita padbyam bhuvarlokosya nabitah Swarloka kalpit murdna itiva loka kalpana. 3 times the word kalpito, kalpana comes here. This is earth and the lower planets are imagined to extend from the feet. Bhuvarloka is at the navel. Swargaloka is imagined to be at the head. This is how others imagine the planets on the universal form. So this is clearly an imagination. So what is an imagination? What constitutes the universal form is not an imagination, right? So, Bhuloka is not an imagination, Bhuvarloka is not an imagination, Swargaloka is not an imagination. These are all not imagination. What is imagination is to think that there is one personality who exists with Bhuloka as his hands, Patala as the soles of his feet. There is no such personality. Certainly, it's not the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord does not have a form which is made of matter. So to think that there is actually a personality who exists with all these planets as his bodily parts, that is an imagination. But the planetary parts in themselves, they are not imagination. So one may say, okay, if it is just an imagination, then what is the utility of meditating on such an imaginary form, right? So not everything that is an imagination has no utility in this world, right? Say, for example, you all use Google Maps, right? Google Maps say, this is where is Napierville. This is where is Charlotte. This is where is State College, Pennsylvania. I mean, is everything there on your phone in Google Map? No, it's just an imagination. But that imagination has a utility, right? It gives us a fair idea. Or you take a map. You say, here is Australia. Here is South Africa. I mean, Australia and South Africa are on top of your table. No, it's just an imagination. It's an imaginary representation to give you an idea as to, how geographically they are located, right? So, so in the same way, universal form is an imagination in the sense what constitutes the universal form, that's not an imagination. The 14 planetary systems are real. The 4 Varnas, 4 ashramas, they are real. But what is imagination is to think that they all form a part of the body of the Supreme Lord. That is imagination. And that imagination is for particular class of people. See, we all are very fortunate. Just imagine. We all are very fortunate because over many lifetimes we have accumulated the spiritual credits which are needed to develop the kind of faith that we have, that we don't have any problems believing that that small boy who is roaming around in a small village in India, he is the source of everything that you see in millions of universes. We don't have any problem believing it, right? But not everyone falls within that category. Most people do not have that kind of spiritual credits to develop this kind of faith. So for them, they can't believe that one personality could own millions of universes, or even this one universe for that matter. They are spiritually inclined, but devotionally poor, right? So everyone who has a spiritual inclination need not necessarily be devotionally well endowed. It is not necessary. So these yogis are those people who are devotionally very poor. They have a spiritual inclination and they want to attain liberation. So such people, for them to think that this whole universe is owned by a person who is a cowherd boy staying in Vrindavan is too much for them to handle. So such people are recommended to meditate on one personality possessing all these planetary systems as his bodily parts. So this is easy for them to accept. So therefore, for such yogis, this kind of meditation is recommended. And this also fairly gives, it has multiple purposes. This is one of the reasons which comes in the first chapter of second canto. Then the second description comes in the 5th and 6th chapters of second canto. Even though the description may look similar, but the purpose of this description is different. The purpose of this description, second description, is to establish the Supreme Lord to be the material and effective cause of this universe. Material cause and effective cause. Material cause means the standard example that is given is, if you see a pot, okay, the pot has 3 kinds of cause. Okay, clay is one cause. Clay is called the material cause or upadana karan. Material cause, right? You have the potter. The potter is the effective cause. Clay in itself will not become pot. The potter has to shape it and bake it. Only then the clay becomes pot, right? But the potter also, so the potter is called the nimitta karan or effective cause. Then the potter also, just by his hands, he cannot shape and bake a pot. He needs some accessories. He needs a potter's wheel. He needs a stick to rotate that pot. And then he needs some firewood to light fire, and then so that he can bake the pot. So these are all the potter's wheel, the stick, the firewood, and everything. This is called as sahakari or instrumental cause, sahakari karan, right? Generally, sahakari karan and nimitta karan are clubbed together and it is accepted to be one. So there are 2 causes, material cause and the effective cause. Okay, so in this 6th chapter, 5th and 6th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, where this universal form is described, The purpose is to establish that the Supreme Lord is actually the material and effective cause of this universe. See, generally, universal form, there is nothing called universal form. There is universe only. So whenever there is a description of universal form, Vaishnavas understand it to mean the universe. So universal form means universe for us. Okay. So here we will see, let's see, I will take some sample descriptions. So he says, from the mouth of the Lord. Okay. From the mouth of the Lord. So who is the Lord mentioned here? The Lord mentioned here is Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. Okay. So Garbhodakashayi Vishnu is the super soul of individual universes. Okay. So from the mouth of the Lord arose speech, the speech organ, Agni, in the universal form. So you have one personality. I'm sorry, I'm artistically very challenged. And okay, I'm trying to draw Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. Let me not offend the Lord by my meager artistic skills. I should not say meager. Meager is actually is an insult. Non-existent artistic skills. I can't even, anyway. So let us say this is Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, and this is the universe. Okay. Every universe has one form of Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, right? And universe is called as the universal form here. Okay. So he says that from the mouth of, let me not complicate, you can say, I will simplify it for you because the details you can always figure out later. Let's say from the mouth of Garbhodakashayi Vishnu forms the mouth of the universe. Okay. Then from the hands of Garbhodakashayi Vishnu forms the hands of the universal form. Like that, this kind of description is there. And from the nose of the universe, Garbhodakashayi Vishnu forms the nose of the universe, and things like that. That kind of a description. And later, also Brahmaji. Okay, I'll not get into that. Anyway, so the point is that how whatever you see in this universe, the source, the material source of all things that you see in the universe is the Supreme Lord only. In order to establish this point, there is this kind of a description of the second description of universal form. Okay, I'll not details. If you need any details, you can always ask in the Q&A session. Then there is a third description of the universal form in the last chapter of second canto. The purpose of this description is to show that how desire is the root cause of material body. Whatever material body you have, either gross or subtle, desire is the cause of that. Okay. So you see the description here. So he says, when the universal form desired to speak, what does this mean? Okay. First thing, universal form itself is imaginary. How can an imaginary form desire to speak? Okay. What this really means, this is actually out and out a metaphorical presentation. Okay. Because the universal form itself is imaginary. How can an imaginary form desire to speak? Okay. So the point is that when the universal form desire to speak means, a universal form means all the jivas within that universe. When all the jivas within the universe, when they get a particular desire, what manifests from his mouth, the Devata of fire, the voice, sense organ, and speech, which is dependent on the Devata and the sense organ, appeared. Okay. So when the universal form desired to speak, then there are four things, right? We have gross organ, we have subtle organ, we have sense Devata. Okay, we will see this. I think I had a, yeah. You see, there is a gross organ, there is a subtle organ, there is a sense Devata, and the sense object. You know, there are four things. Okay. So, okay, I think there is a mistake here. Okay. So, if you see here, there is the gross organ, the nose is nasika, that which you can see and touch. But the ability to smell in your nose, that is called grana. That is the sukshmendriya or the subtle organ. Then our ability to smell is controlled by some demigods. They are called the sense demigods or the sense devatas. So for the nose, they are the Ashwini Kumaras, and the sense object is Gandha or smell. Right? Similarly, if you take the eyes, the eyeballs are called as Akshini. But the ability to see is called as Chakshu. This is the subtle organ or Sukshmendriya. Then sun god or Surya Dev, he is the sense devata who controls the ability to see. And the sense object is Rupa or form. Right? Like that, you know, there are gross organ, subtle organ, the sense devata and that. So the description goes something like this. And then the universal form desired to speak. So to speak what all you want, you need a mouth. So then the mouth appeared. You need a tongue, the gross tongue, the tongue appeared. Then you need a subtle tongue. You know, the ability to speech is the Sukshmendriya that manifests. And then Agni or fire, he is the demigod of speech. He appeared. Like that, you know, there are, then when the universal form desired to smell, the gross nose appeared, the subtle nose appeared, then the Ashwini Kumaras, who are the sense devatas, they appeared. Like that, you know, that kind of description comes. Basically, the purpose is for every single living entity in this material world, it is his desire which shapes his gross body and subtle body. In order to establish this principle of how the desire of the living entity decides his destination and his destiny. In order to establish this point, this kind of a description, this is a metaphorical description, because a universal form can never desire, because universal form is an imaginary form, right? Like that. See, I will read one more verse, one more translation. It will give you some idea. When there was no vision in the universal form, and he desired to see, the two eyes, the presiding deity known as the sun, the sense organ called the eye, which experiences form, appeared. So all of them appeared. So universal form has no, you know, eyes. It essentially means that the living entities, by their desire, they form their own material bodies, right? Like that. So this is the brief. The point is that Bhagavatam is not trying to be redundant here. Each description of this universal form has a particular purpose. Anyway, let's stop here and let's move on. Okay, any questions that you have, you can please towards the end of the section, and we will definitely take, because I want to spend some time here. We did discuss on this topic in my second Bhakti Sangha session that I gave. We did touch on this topic, but of course we went very fast. But I want to elaborate on one of those sections. We discussed on the topic of the right mood to approach these technical sections of Srimad Bhagavatam, you know, the universal form, the universal cosmology, and all those things. how do we approach these sections? Because they seem very boring, very technical, very difficult to understand. So how do we approach these sections? Okay. So we did discuss this topic while discussing the last verse of fourth canto. I spoke on the last of fourth canto. So just before starting the fifth canto, in which we were going to discuss the Vedic cosmology, I just touched on this topic and we discussed on this topic. We discussed 6 reasons. I will just state those reasons and I will take one of those reasons and we will try to elaborate on that today. Okay. We saw, so that the essential topic was that why is there so much discussion about the universal form and other topics like liberation in Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, the Srimad Bhagavatam is supposed to be the Amala Purana, the spotless Purana, right? But there are so much, Bhagavatam itself says, Srimad Bhagavatam Puranam Amalam Yad Vaishnavanam Priyam. It is a spotless Purana. And then in the second verse it says, Dharma Projita Kaitavotra Paramo Nirmatsaranam Satam. Only the non-envious can approach Srimad Bhagavatam. And from the outset, Bhagavatam kicks out all kinds of cheating religion like Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. Okay. Having given this kind of an assurance to the speaker, but interestingly, Bhagavatam does talk about liberation, universal form, which is an imaginary form, which is not worshipped by the devotees. And it talks about Karma Yoga, it talks about Jnana Yoga, it talks about Ashtanga Yoga, so many other such. Why? So we saw many reasons. For those of you, who want more details about, we are going to discuss in detail one of the 6 reasons that that we had discussed in that second class. But if you want more details about all these things, you can go to 4.31. Whatever the last verse. I think I did mention the verse number here. I think. So in the last verse of the 4th canto, you can see I have spoken on this. Okay. The first reason that we saw was Srimad Bhagavatam is not just for the Paramahamsas. Even though it is called as Paramahamsa Samhita, it is not just for the Paramahamsas. We saw this. The second reason we saw was understanding of these kind of technical topics is a prerequisite to understand the higher topics. Okay. This was the second thing that we discussed. Then the third thing is that Bhagavatam accomplishes multiple purposes through multiple topics. See, each one of these topics could go for one Bhakti Sangha discussion, So I will take one of those topics and I want to discuss on that. Fourth reason that we saw was proper understanding of these topics leads to purification. And then the fifth reason is that different people have different qualifications. Not everyone is qualified for pure devotional service. We saw this. And then the sixth reason was that any Mahapuran has to discuss the 10 topics, but Srimad Bhagavatam in discussing the other 9 topics does it in a very special way. And for that purpose, the other 9 topics are also there in Srimad Bhagavatam. This is just a very brief, you might not have understood any of these reasons, and I don't expect also because, each one we have elaborately discussed. In that, I would like to today discuss on this second reason. Understanding of these topics is a prerequisite to understand the higher topics. We are discussing now universal form, or in the 5th canto, you discussed Vedic cosmology. So, what does Vedic cosmology have? What does it have to do with my developing Krishna Prem? So one may think like that, or why do I have a need to understand this universal form and all these things? Okay. So in the 2nd canto, you see, 2nd canto and 3rd canto primarily discusses about universal form and the activities of the Purushavataras, or Karanodaka Sai Vishnu, Garbhodaka Sai Vishnu, and Shirodaka Sai Vishnu. Basically, it is Srishti Leela. Okay, I will be using this terminology. Okay. Srishti Leela, by Srishti Leela, I mean creation pastimes. Okay. Which are performed by the Purushavatas. So the Purushavatas are the three Vishnus, who are also the super soul manifestations. Okay. So here in the second canto and third canto, there is primary creation described. In the fourth canto, primarily there is secondary creation described. Then fifth canto talks about Vedic cosmology, how the universe is structured and all that. And from the sixth canto onwards, some serious discussion about the Leela avatars is going to start. The pastime incarnations. But in a major way, if you see second, third, fourth, and fifth, the four cantos are primarily talking about creation. Srishti Leela, about this material world only, about the pastimes performed by the Purushavatas. Right? And towards the end of the fifth canto ends with 5.26.40. 2 verses before the last verse, Srila Shukadeva Goswami drops a bombshell. He says, he speaks this verse. Okay, I will not read the verse. I will directly read the translation. He says, in the beginning, the second and third cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam, I have already described how one can progress in the path of liberation. In the second canto, first 2 chapters, he describes liberation. In the third canto, he describes liberation while in the Kapila Dev's teachings to his mother Devahuti. He says, I have described this. He's summarizing what all he has spoken. He says, in the Puranas, the universe divided into 14 parts is described as the gross body of the Supreme Lord Narayana, made of his material Maya. So this universal form is described in the Puranas, including in the second canto, in the third canto, and in the fifth canto. That universal description is also there. Now, I want you to hear this very carefully. Please hear what I'm going to read now. He says, if one reads the description of this external form of the Lord with great faith, or if one hears about it and explains it to others, if one hears this Srishti Leela, this creation pastimes, and the descriptions of this universal form and all these things with faith, one hears or reads or explains it to others, what happens to such a person? Shraddha, Bhakti, Vishuddha Buddhi. He develops 3 things. Shraddha means faith. He is going to develop a higher type of faith, a more evolved stage of decision, and Vishuddha Buddhi means purified intelligence. So when one hears these subject matters with faith, explains it to others with faith, or reads them with faith, then 3 things come. A more evolved stage of faith, a more evolved stage of level of devotion, and a more purified intelligence. Okay. Saha, and only such a person, he says Veda, only such a person can understand Bhagavatah Atmano Upageyam. Only such a person can understand the topics of Bhagavan. Okay. The Purushavatas are Paramatma's feature. The Leela avatars and others, they are Bhagavan feature. He says, Agrahyam. Understanding the Leela avatars is he says, is like an Upanishad, very difficult to understand. But if one hears this Purushavatar Katha or Srishti Leela, the creation pastimes of Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, Kshirodakashayi Vishnu, and Karanodakashayi Vishnu, how they come together and create functional universes in this material world. When one hears this kind of creation pastimes, he says he develops a higher level of faith, higher level of devotion, and more purified intelligence. And such a person can understand the pastimes of Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, Narasimha, Lord Rama, Krishna. All these pastimes one can understand. And these pastimes, like an Upanishad, is very difficult to understand. But the creation pastime is very easy to understand. This is the point that Srila Shukadeva Goswami is mentioning. Now, my question to you is, how many of you feel this is exactly contradictory to your understanding? How many of you feel that the creation pastimes are very difficult to understand, but the pastimes of Krishna, Lord Rama, Narasimha, these are very easy to understand? How many of you feel? You can please raise your hands. You don't have to speak, but you can raise your hands. I see few of you are raising your hands. I think most people would agree with it, right? Most people would agree with it, because these pastimes are, in one sense, above our head. Because you have just read, Pavaneshwar Prabhu would have described the creation pastimes, right? How many of you understood perfectly, with all the details? Anyone here? Right? Very difficult, right? But the other pastimes, Lord Ram went to the forest and all that, easy to understand, right? So now, but here Shukadeva Goswami is giving a totally opposite understanding. He says, if you understand these creation pastimes, then you develop a higher level of faith, higher level of devotion, and higher level of purified intelligence, which is actually needed to understand the Leelavatar pastimes, which are actually very difficult to understand. Right? So here, Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport of this verse, he says, the Krishna consciousness movement is pushing forward the publication of Srimad Bhagavatam, as explained especially for the understanding of the modern civilized man, to awaken him to his original consciousness. Without this consciousness, one melts into complete darkness. Whether one goes to the upper planetary systems or the hellish planetary systems, he simply wastes his time. Therefore, one should hear of the universal position of the Virat form of the Lord as described in Srimad Bhagavatam. That will help one save himself from material conditional life and gradually elevate him to the path of liberation, so that he can go back home, back to Godhead. So Prabhupada says that this is a prerequisite. You have to hear this, right? So now the question is, why are the pastimes of the Leela Avataras difficult to understand? Are they really difficult to understand? This is something that we will try to understand today. If you see, in reality, the pastimes of the creation pastimes, they may require some intellect, you can say, to understand the details, an ability to perceive things. But in terms of devotional maturity that is needed to understand the creation pastimes, it's very minimal. But these Leela Avataras, if you have to understand, the devotional maturity that is needed is of very high level. Because these Leela Avataras engage in pastimes with their devotees who are connected to these forms of the Lord in one of the 5 rasas. So to actually understand their exchanges, you need to have some understanding of spiritual emotions. And to understand spiritual emotions is not easy. A beginner in Krishna consciousness cannot understand spiritual emotions. Right? Whereas in Leelavatar Katha, in Purushavatar Katha, or in the pastimes of creation, there is no rasa involved. So, because the Paramatma is Upadrashta Anumanta, Bharta Bhokta Maheshwara. That is his role. He observes what is the desire of the living entity and whether he has some karmic balance to enjoy that desire, and he sanctions it. So the Paramatma's role is only sanctioning. Paramatma does not get personally involved with any living entity. Very neutral position. So there is no relationship of rasa between the Paramatma forms and any devotee. So to understand Srishti Leela, it may be technically difficult, but devotionally it's not so rigorous. You don't need a very high devotional qualification to understand Srishti Leela. But in reality, to actually understand the Leelavatar's Katha, you need to have an understanding of rasa. Because spiritual emotions are different. Spiritual emotions are very much different from material emotions. They have some similarity in their external form. But when it comes to the actual content of spiritual emotions, it's completely different. Okay. So let's do a small exercise. I want to give you an idea of how when it comes to form, there is form and then there is impetus. Okay. So when it comes to material and spiritual activities, when it comes to material activities and spiritual activities, right? When it comes to material activities and spiritual activities, the form may be similar. Okay. But the impetus to the way in which the emotion manifests, that may be similar. Okay. But the impetus varies. Okay. So the impetus for material emotions is the 3 modes. And the impetus for spiritual emotions is prema. Okay. So let's do a small exercise. What I want you to do is, I want maximum people to participate in this exercise. You don't have to switch on your video, but what I want you to do is, I want you to open your chat box, Zoom chat box. Please open your Zoom chat box. Okay. I will send you something. I want you to write the underlying emotion that is connected with what you see on the screen. I will send you something. You see what is there, and please type in the chat box and let me know what is the underlying emotion. Okay. I don't want you to see what you see. Don't write that. What is the underlying emotion? Okay. Here you go. This is the first thing. Please take a look and tell me what is the underlying emotion. Wondering, thinking, confusion, curiosity. Yes, right? All of you similar, inquisitive, thoughtful, wondering what's happening, right? Curious, right? Everyone is right. Okay. Okay, let's do another exercise. Okay. What is this? In case if you're wondering what it is, there is some drool coming out of his mouth.
Prabhuji, we didn't get it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Just hold on. I will send it again. Just hold on. Okay. Okay, it's a drool, right? Drool can mean lethargy. Yes. Drool can also mean temptation, right? You feel like eating, temptation, is the emotion, tempting. Okay. Okay, fine. Let's try one more. Okay. Don't tell him what he is doing. Tell me what is the underlying emotion that you see in this emoji. What is this? Emotion. Don't tell sleepy, please. Okay. Sleepiness is not an emotion. Tiredness, fine. Boredom, correct? When someone is sitting in the class and yawning, then you certainly know that he is not interested in the subject matter, right? So, like that, I can show you many. Let's do one more, right? Let's do one more. Okay, is the emotion here? Anger, frustration, right? Fed up, irritated. Yeah. See, the point that I'm trying to make is we are so expert in the material world. If you see, any emotion manifests in the form of fairly predictable physiognomical changes. It's not that I am showing certain, it's not that we all are sitting in the same classroom and I am demonstrating something. It's not even that we all have our videos on and I am demonstrating something. It's just something as simple as an emoji. When I send it, you are able to very fairly, accurately predict the emotion that it is trying to convey, right? So in this material world, we are experts in observing physical changes, physiognomical changes, and we can fairly guess the emotion that it is, the emotion that is generating those physiognomical changes, the bodily changes, right? The problem is similar bodily changes happen in where spiritual emotions are also involved. But spiritual emotions are not generated. Like say, for example, I will keep telling one emotion and you tell me which is the mode which is generating that emotion. Okay. Please keep your chat box on and quickly type. Okay. I will tell an emotion and you tell me what is the mode. There are 3 modes, right? So mode of goodness, passion, ignorance. So you have to type which mode it is. Okay. Lust. Okay. Passion, rajas, one is typing. Okay. Anger. Sorry. Anger. Okay. Everyone is writing passion, but it's almost like passion spilling over to ignorance. Actually, it's mostly ignorance. Tamogun. Okay. Okay. Greed. Greed is not ignorance. Greed is passion. Okay. Right. And okay. Anyway, so point is every material emotion is driven by one of the 3 modes, right? So you can see the point that I'm trying to say is that looking at a particular activity that is being performed or a bodily change that is manifesting, you can guess the emotion, and from that emotion, you can understand which is the predominant mode that is controlling that person. We are experts in it, in this material world, right? And this expertise is our biggest problem. Why? Because when we see spiritually perfected personalities showing such physical changes, then or performing particular activities, we tend to extrapolate our material experiences to the spiritual realm, and we think that, oh, he's crying, he must be controlled by mode of ignorance. So he is the gopis are embracing Krishna, oh, mode of passion, right? But interestingly, even though they may have a form which is very similar to material relationships, material emotions, but their substance is totally different. Okay, so that is why Srila Rupa Goswami, in describing the love of the gopis towards Krishna, he calls it as I will read. Kama Rupa Ragatmika. Ragatmika Bhakti. Okay. So Kama Rupa means the form. So the gopis also embrace Krishna, the gopis kiss Krishna, the gopis dance with Krishna. So the form looks very much like Kama, lust, material relationship. But Atma means the essence. What is the essence of that relationship? It is Raga. Raga means Prema. Raga means Krishna Saukyartam Eva Kevalam Udyama. Every single endeavor is performed for the pleasure of Krishna. Right? Therefore, it is called as Bhakti. So, when we see form, the form of love that is exhibited, the external form of love that the perfected devotees have towards Krishna, it looks exactly like the form that is seen in material world. But the impetus that that inspires them, that which inspires lust is mode of passion, but that which inspires, that which looks like lust, is actually raga, which is prema. Okay, but because we are so used to observing only material emotions, and we interpret every physical activity, physical change to being driven by a material emotion. Therefore, when we hear the pastimes of Krishna with devotees, when we see an external change or an external activity, we interpret it based on material emotions. Right? So therefore, to understand the pastimes of the Leela avatars, unless we have an understanding of rasa or spiritual emotions, how they work, how can there be emotions which are not generated by the three modes? How can there be emotions which are generated purely out of transcendental love towards Krishna? Because we are not cognizant of this, we have not experienced this. So therefore, for us to understand it and interpret it is very difficult, actually. Right? So let's take some examples. Okay. So the first example that we will take is Uddhava's jealousy of the Vrajavasis. Now, Jealousy is a byproduct of which mode? Jealousy is a byproduct of which mode? Jealousy or envy, right? Rajas, passion, correct? Yeah. So passion. So it's a byproduct passion, right? Now let's read about Uddhava's envy towards the Vrajavasis. Okay. This description comes in Brihad Bhagavatamrita. I will read only the essential part because we are running short of time. Okay. So I will read. The scene is that Narada Muni is on his journey to find out who is the greatest recipient of Krishna's mercy. So he reaches Dwaraka and he goes, and as he tells the Dwarkavasis that you are the greatest recipients of Krishna's mercy. Dwarkavasis say, no, this is not right. Go to Uddhava. Uddhava is the greatest recipient of Krishna's mercy. So Narada Muni approaches Uddhava, glorifies Uddhava to be the greatest recipient of Krishna's mercy. Immediately, Uddhava starts thinking about the Vrajavasis. And he thinks, how could Narada Muni even think that I am the greatest recipient of Krishna's mercy when the Vrajavasis are there? And by thinking of these Vrajavasis, he developed feelings of jealousy. He developed feelings of jealousy or envy. Okay. So now, I will read the translation. Only 11 translation I will read. Okay. So he says here, then he became joyful, pramudam gatah, and spoke to the sage, moved by the sattvic emotion of jealousy. Sattvikat matsaryat avadapya pramudam gatah. So, do you see the point here? He says, first thing, the word matsarya is used, which means envy or jealousy. We know envy or jealousy is a byproduct of mode of passion. But here he says, sattvika matsarya. Sattvika means goodness. But this is not mode of goodness, material goodness. This is Shuddha Sattva, Vishuddha Sattva. And there is envy at that stage also. Okay. Now, my question to you is, material envy, can you think of some attendant emotion which accompanies envy? Whenever envy is there, along with that, is there any other emotion? What kind of emotion does envy create in oneself and in people around that person? What can you think of some other attendant emotions? Anger, sadness, Tiffany Mataji says. Anger, correct. Okay. Irritation, definitely. Love, I mean, someone says envy creates love, so hatred, frustration, right? But now here, okay, thank you, enough. So here it is mentioned that this jealousy created joy, pramudam gatah. So this envy of Uddhava created joy in his heart. Now, which person in this world, when he becomes envious, becomes joyful? Unless he is a pervert or something like that, right? So, I will read some essential sections from here. He says, Uddhava was next confronted by the bhava of jealousy, intolerance of good fortune. That's exactly what Uddhava was feeling. He was feeling intolerant of the good fortune of the Vrajavasis. This is exactly how Uddhava felt. He was feeling intolerant of the good fortune of the Vrajavasis. This transcendental jealousy, however, was sattvika, born out of pure goodness, untouched by the influence of passion and ignorance. Therefore, it was a cause of joy. Okay. So, having no trace of hatred, this ecstatic jealousy gave no distress to Uddhava or anyone else. Otherwise, material jealousy would create distress. to oneself and others. But for Uddhava, because this was transcendental jealousy, this 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 shows symptoms which are very similar. In form, it looks like normal material jealousy, but in substance, it is not material jealousy, it is prema, pure unadulterated love towards Krishna. But because we have never experienced it, it is very difficult for us to relate with it, because for us, every single emotion is generated by the three modes. We are not used to experiencing any emotion which is beyond the three modes. So we naturally correlate it that way. So unless we know the nature of spiritual emotions, then we are severely, you can say, short-sighted in understanding these Leela Avatar Katha. Even though we may get some understanding that, oh yeah, you know, Krishna is crawling, Krishna is crying, Krishna is playing flute. These are very easy to understand. Okay, but you know, there is some personality from whose bodily pores millions of universes are emanating. This may seem like really fantastic thing which needs some serious commentary and explanation. But interestingly, if you see, all the acharyas write 1 or 2 lines commentary to all the creation pastime verses, even though they seem absolutely fantastic and superhuman. But to the completely human pastimes of Krishna, they write pages after pages after pages of commentary. Some acharyas write multiple commentaries for the 10th canto verses which are seemingly absolutely human pastimes. Krishna is playing the flute. How many people are there in this world who can play flute? What to speak of flute? They can play trumpet, saxophone, clarinet, you know, so many different instruments they can play. So, but if you see, you know, such elaborate purports written on that, how come? Because they involve spiritual emotions, which ordinary living entities don't have any capability of understanding actually. That is why such elaborations are needed. That is why Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, avajananti mam mudha manushim tanu ashritam. So the foolish person, when Krishna appears as a human being, foolish people think that he is just another human being. Okay. But similarly, when Krishna engages in pastimes with his devotees, they similarly consider those devotees also as ordinary, and their emotions to be just like our emotions. This is the big mistake that we do, right? Okay, let's see one more example. This comes in the 4th canto, where Prithu Maharaj is into a competition with Mother Lakshmi. He's competing with Mother Lakshmi for the same service. So this competition is born out of which mode? Generally in the material world, competition is born out of which mode? Rajas, passion, right? Now let's see what the story is here. Okay, so okay, fine. So here he says, I will not read the verse because we are running short of time. So here, this is in Prithu Maharaj's prayers in the 4th canto, 20th chapter. Having great desire like Lakshmi, Padma Kara iva lalasa. Lalasa means greed. So Prithu Maharaj admits that, you know what? I have a greed which is very similar to Mother Lakshmi's greed. Therefore, I worship the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. And then he says, Apyavayor ekapati sprudo kalihi. Perhaps there will be a competition between us for one master. Like that he says. Maybe we may compete because she wants to do the same, I want to do the same service, maybe we'll compete for that same service. Who will get that service? He has a competing mood towards Mother Lakshmi. And here actually, and he is comparing himself, which is very similar to mode of passion. People in mode of passion constantly compare themselves with others. They compare what they have with what the others have, like that. So here he says he compares himself to Lakshmi with the word Eva, suggesting that he can take a portion of such service, for Lakshmi is most famous for her service to the Lord's feet. Anyway, so Prithu Maharaj is telling, you have already become famous for massaging, for getting the opportunity to massage the Lord's feet. So you can allow me also to do it for a while. So here, this may seem very much like mundane competition, but here it is mentioned, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti says, as the foremost devotee, he expresses Veera Bhakti. Veera Bhakti means a desire for competition in relation to Lakshmi. Okay. So, he wonders if quarrel with Lakshmi while performing Bhakti. He is just as he quarreled with Indra while doing karma. So, Prithu Maharaj is thinking, oh, I may quarrel with Lakshmi, like that. Okay. So then he says, Jagad Jananyam Jagadisha Vaishasam Syadeva Yat Karmanina Samihitam Karoshi Falgva Purudina Vatsa Swaeva Dishne Bhiratasya Kimtaya. So he says, oh Jagadisha, O Lord of the universe, Jagad Jananyam, maybe the mother of the universe, Vaishasam Syad, maybe she will become angry. Yat Karmani Naha Samihitam, because I am desiring her service, she may become angry. Why are you trying to take my service? So then the question arises, my dear Prithu Maharaj, do you have the capacity to handle Mother Lakshmi's anger? Are you capable enough to tolerate Mother Lakshmi's anger? Prithu Maharaj says, oh, no problem. Why? He says, oh Lord, you are Deenavatsala. You are affectionate to the miserable. Compared to Lakshmi, Mother Lakshmi is exalted. I am miserable. So because you are Deenavatsala, you will show your affection towards me only. So if we both are fighting for the same service, because you are more affectionate to the fallen soul, you will say, Lakshmi, you can do it later, and then you will engage me. So when you engage me, Mother Lakshmi will not become angry on me. Or even if she becomes angry, she cannot do anything to me, because I am supported by your love and affection for me. So he says, Falgu api urukaroshi, you make great those who are small. Kim taya, what use do I have for her? Swa eva dishne abhiratasya, since I have your power behind me, what use is Lakshmi for me? I don't care for her. I don't care for her. This sounds like which material emotion? This sounds like what kind of material emotion? I mean, I'm not asking the mode, general. I have my higher connections. I don't care about the intermediate people. This sounds like what emotion? Pride, right? It's definitely pride, correct? So arrogance, yes, pride and arrogance. This exactly sounds like that. So now let's see what the acharyas explain what this is. So Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti says, this verse describes Prithu's Veera Bhakti. This is a kind of bhakti, he says, okay, which is defined in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. What is this Veera Bhakti? Kripam tasya samashritya praudam nanyam apekshate atulam yo vahana krishne pritim virasa uchyate. The devotee who takes shelter of Krishna definitely is a person who is surrendered to Krishna. and has incomparable attraction for Krishna. So this is real attraction and incomparable attraction that he has for Krishna. But the problem is, na anyam apekshate. He does not notice others. He is not bothered about others, not out of pride or arrogance, but this is a kind of bhakti. This is a particular mood of bhakti. Many times I have heard devotees ask, Prabhu, this kind of competition happens in the spiritual world also, where there is anger, Mother Lakshmi will become angry and all that. Yes, why not? But that is not that our kind of anger, right? So, yeah. So that's what it's transcendental, but we are trying to understand what is that transcendental thing. There may be some conflict with me, who is also my mother, since I reside within this universe. Why? I have a desire for her service. I want to do her service. So Prithu Maharaj is thinking, let her sit on your chest. You have already given her a place in your body, which is chest in the form of the Shrivatsa mark. She should be happy sitting there. I am the son and I will do all service to your feet. And Prithu Maharaj is thinking, is she so stubborn that she cannot live without that service? This is the actual mood of Prithu Maharaj when it comes to Lakshmi. Does it sound offensive to you? What do you think? Does it sound offensive to you? Yeah, it definitely sounds offensive, right? So, someone may say, hey, but Prithu Maharaj, you are just a novice, but she is very experienced. You are low and she is exalted. Why do you compete with her? You are not so exalted. She's so exalted. Why you are competing with her? Prithu Maharaj says, true. You are right. But just as you took my side in the quarrel with Indra, you should favor me in this case as well. Krishna is, Prithu Maharaj is telling the Lord. You make an insignificant very great because you are affectionate to low creatures like me. Then the Lord says, look, I will help you, no problem. Let us assume that I will support you. But I am just wondering, are you not afraid of her anger? She's Lakshmi. For your information, are you not afraid of her anger? Prithu Maharaj says, I do not fear her anger. Why? Since I possess your power, why should I worry about her? I have your power behind me. I should not worry about her. My strength is your great mercy. Okay. This actually sounds like arrogance and pride. But in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, there is a description of a devotee who speaks like this. Okay. Hear this. Okay. And tell me how this sounds. He says, Pralamba Ripurishwaro Bhavatu Kakritistena me Kumara Makaradvajadapi na kinchid aste phalam. Kimanyad aham uddhatah Prabhu Kripa Kataksha Shriya Priya Parishad Agrimam na Ganayami Bhamam api. So he says, Balaram, the enemy of Pralamba, he may be the Supreme Lord, but what use do I have for him? He is useless. I don't have any use of Balaram. He may be the Supreme Lord, but I don't care. And what can I gain from the Prince Pradyumna? I don't have anything to gain from Pradyumna. Hey, why you're talking like this? He says, since I have been elevated by the wealth of Krishna's glance of mercy, I do not give regard even to Satyabhama, the head of all Krishna's followers. Right? How does this sound? How does this sound? Offensive, this is proud. If you remember, puffed up, yeah. And if you see in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he's verbally actually disregarding. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, actually, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami's brother, when Minaketan Ramdas comes, he was one of the chief associates of Nityananda Prabhu, actually he was doing his pujari work. Okay, he was doing worship of the Lord, just that he did not welcome Miniketan Ramdas. That's all. And that too while he was doing deity worship. Okay, but this became such an offense, and he did not verbally criticize neither Miniketan Ramdas nor Nityananda Prabhu, but he completely, his spiritual life completely got destroyed because of that offensive attitude, which was internal. But here is a person who is telling, oh, Balramji may be the Supreme Lord, but I don't care for him. Oh, Pradyumna, the son of Krishna, oh, what use do I have for, what can I gain from him? Satyabhama, I don't care for her. This, he says, is Veera Bhakti. This is a kind of spiritual mood which pleases Krishna immensely. And this is not born out the material mode of passion. It is born out of pure love for Krishna. But do we understand this language? Unless we understand the nature of rasa, unless we understand the language of rasa, when we read such things, which generally in Leelavataras, the devotees may relate with Krishna in this way. So, we may misunderstand actually, because it's very similar to material emotions, right? So, of course, I'm running out of time. I will just take maybe one more. Mother Kunti's lamentation. Okay, I will take this. This also comes in. So this I am going to tell you for the purpose of how when people share a relationship with very deep relationship with each other, a lot is communicated beyond the words. Like say, for example, I will give you an example. Observation of my father and mother. Okay. Mother cooks and she is serving prasadam to my father. Okay. I've observed. All these years I've observed. My father says enough. Okay. Then after he says enough, mother serves one more spoon and the father does not say anything. Because enough in his language means one more spoon. That is the unspoken communication which they have developed between themselves over decades of relationship with each other. Okay. But about a month back, I went with my father and mother to another devotee's house. Okay. And there that Mataji was serving prasadam. My father said enough. And then the Mataji moved to the next plate and she started serving there. My mother said, no, you serve him one more spoon. Because, that is not a universal language, right? So the point that I'm trying to say is, when you have a relationship, sometimes what you communicate through words may be exactly opposite to what the actual intention. Or sometimes nothing may be communicated through words, but then there is a very significant communication has already gone through. The other person has understood. So when a relationship is there, a lot is communicated beyond words. Okay, sometimes words may say something, but the emotions conveyed are totally different, right? Say here, this will see in the case of Kunti Maharani. So she says, Parikshit Maharaj, this comes in again Srimad Bhagavatam. Mother Kunti, for whom the sight of Krishna was life. Okay, Krishna Darshana Jivana. Okay, Shokarta Iva. So Kunti Maharani and all the Pandavas, their only life and soul was actually Krishna's taking darshan of Krishna. Okay. So, and she lamented just like an ordinary lamentation. Okay. For example, he says, here Srila Sanatana Goswami commenting on this, he says, like our sons, their wife, Kunti is a transcendental soul blessed with the full mercy of Krishna. This is the truth, no matter what she says. Because here Kunti Maharani will say so many things. She will say that I am very unfortunate. I am very more fortunate than Devaki, because Devaki's children, Krishna allowed Devaki's children to be killed, but Krishna saved my children. Okay. So it may seem like, oh, Kunti Maharani thinks, the opportunity to stay with one's relatives and its mercy. Okay. So Kunti Maharani we may think that, this is what Kunti Maharani says, thinks that mercy means to stay with getting an opportunity to stay with one's own relatives and children. But this is not at all what she is indicating. Even though her words are something, what she is conveying is different. We will not understand, but Krishna understands. So here he says, that is why Parikshit Maharaj is Srila Sanatana Goswami is warning us. He says, like our sons and their wife, Kunti is transcendental soul, blessed with the full mercy of Krishna. This is the truth, no matter what she says, which means what she says may seem like she is not a transcendental soul. So who will pray for, Krishna, let me always stay with my children, this sounds like very material. And Kunti Maharani also will seem to indicate, but this is not real. He says, the ecstasy of separation, Vipralamba Bhav, impelled her to complain sorrowfully as if an ordinary woman. You know why she does that? That's where Parikshit Maharaj says here, Krishna Darshana Jivana. Krishna Darshana Jivana means her life air is residing in her eyes. And when she takes darshan of Krishna, she remains alive, seeing Krishna, for seeing Krishna, while seeing Krishna. And she still remains alive while anticipating to see Krishna. So whatever works, she will do whatever is needed to have Krishna's association. So sometimes whatever she will speak, she may not mean that. Vipada Santuta Shashvat. Initially she says, Vishan Mahagne Purushada Darshanad Asat Sabhaya Vanavasa Krichrataha. Mride Mride Aneka Maharatastrato Draunyasatraschasma Hare Birakshita. My dear Krishna, you protected us from so many calamities. You protected all my children. They are still alive. Such a mercy. Like that. But in reality, she says, what is real mercy? He says, may all those calamities come again and again. Vipada santuta shashvat tatra tatra jagadguru bhavato darshanam yatsyat apunar bhavadarshanam. For me, calamities, no calamities, whether my children are alive or dead, that does not really matter. What really matters is to have your association. Now, what will attract your association? If I lament, I am your devotee. If I lament for something, then you will come. If I cry, danger, danger, you will come to protect me. But what is danger for me? Not seeing you is the only danger. This she will not verbally communicate. But she will say, oh, my children are suffering. Krishna, where are you? Krishna will come. But actually, she is not worried about children's danger. She wants to have Krishna's darshan. But you see the communication. The communication is something, but the intent is something else completely. So these are the kind of pastimes. Even though lamentation is normal, anyone can lament in this material world. But there is something much more deeper to this. Of course, this, I have a lot of material and I wish to discuss this more, but I honestly want to leave some time for some discussion. But the point is, I will just summarize in one line that we may think that these kind of technical subject matters like Virat form, universal cosmology, these are all actually our Purushavatar's Leela, creation pastimes, Srishti Leela and all. These are difficult, but actually these are not difficult in one. You don't need much of a devotional maturity to understand these pastimes. But to understand the higher pastimes, the pastimes of the Leela Avataras, one needs some understanding of rasa and spiritual emotions. And to understand rasa and spiritual emotions needs a higher level of spiritual maturity. But the biggest illusion is that everyone who hears this pastime thinks that he understands. That is the biggest illusion. That is why they are like, they are very difficult to understand, because everyone thinks they understand at their own level. But many things cannot be taken at face value. We don't understand spiritual emotions. We don't understand, how spiritual emotions are generated. So they may look very similar to material emotions. Anyway, these are some random thoughts. I have just put them together. I'm sorry again, as usual. I just fall short of time, and I just don't get to finish my presentation. But anyway, thank you very much for your patient listening. It was very wonderful having your patient listening, and Hare Krishna. If there are any quick discussion points, comments, you can please go ahead.
Hare
Yes,
Krishna,
Mother
Prabhu.
Gail. Yes,
Pranam,
Prabhu.
Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Very beautiful class, Prabhu. Amazing class. I think we are sorry that we don't have enough time to just stay with you, Prabhu. What a beautiful class. I made so many points, but as we are falling short of time, I skipped those points. But I certainly loved your interactive class, Prabhu. And I want to tell you one thing, that today we broke a record of messages on Bhakti Sangha. Most messages ever. So thank you so much for that. A new record made today. And I loved your mother-father communication skills. That was so beautiful from you, Prabhu. Thank you for such a personal, beautiful realization to put it in the class. Gail Mataji, please go ahead with your question, Mataji.
Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, okay. Yeah, now you can unmute yourself, Mata.
Okay, Hare Krishna Prabhu. Yes, my goodness, it was so amazing to get this explanation of how, because I always hear that the spiritual emotions are not the same as the material ones that we experience, but this is the first time I'm understanding why they're not the same, in a more detailed way. So it's very wonderful to get that why, and how, so thank you so much for that. Yeah, going back to your explanation.
I just want to add one small point, Mataji. Just to the point that you made. They are, if they were absolutely different, it would not be a problem. But in form, they look absolutely similar to material emotions.
Yes.
And that's where we get trapped. And we think we have figured it out. We think we have figured it out.
Yes, like you said, that's the biggest illusion, because by appearance, they're the same, but in substance, they're not. Just like one analogy I've heard is gold and iron, Yes, they're both metals, so in that way they seem the same, but in substance, they're vastly different, Gold, you would never pay a lot of money for iron.
I mean, that at least in appearance they look little different, but I'll give you a different example. Like a vehicle that runs on petrol and electricity,
Yes.
Externally it looks exactly same, but the driving force or the fuel is quite different actually.
Yeah, I love that. I love that analogy even better, much better. Thank you. Okay, so my question, one of them, my God, I have so much, but this the universal form, right? At one point, you said that, I think when you were maybe explaining the first one, you said that it is not material, you know?
I didn't say
because,
that, Mataji.
oh, okay,
I didn't
okay.
say that
You
it's
said
not material. It is.
something similar to that. What did you say?
I said it's imaginary. I didn't say it's not material. It is material.
Or maybe Krishna's form is not material. I don't know. Something about not material. I guess I'll have to listen to the tape, to the recording.
Yeah, I don't remember saying, but maybe if I had, then maybe it was, I didn't intend to say it that way. Maybe it was a slip of the tongue or something like that.
No, I will listen to the recording to see exactly. Because, you know, when whatever it was you said, then it made me think of the universal form that was shown to Arjuna in the Gita. And that universal form, would you say that that form is material or not?
Well, it is definitely a material form only, Mataji.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
so
no doubt.
You know, and
therefore it is mentioned that he received celestial eyes. It does not say that he received transcendental eyes to see that form. Bhagavad Gita says he received divya chakshu. Divya chakshu means celestial eyes. Celestial is still material.
Yes. Well, I'm glad you said that. That's a very important distinction, you know, between celestial and transcendental. Very nice. I never heard that distinction before. And so I think you described 3 universal forms in this class, right? 3?
I said 3 descriptions of the universal form with a different focus.
Okay, so these 3 descriptions of a universal form, but how many?
For different purpose.
Yes, so one universal form was described in 3 different ways. Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, so the universal form that was shown to Arjuna is not just a different description, it's a totally different universal form also, no?
It's the same. The same.
Because
if you see the description,
the universal form that was shown to Arjuna, that description seems very different from, let's say, you know, the legs are, I don't know, Patala Lok, the head is Satya Lok or something like that. That description seems very different.
No, not necessarily, Mataji. Actually, I'll tell you a thing. Let's say if you stay in a particular part of United States, let's say if some of your relatives are coming from your father and mother and some of your relatives are coming in a particular flight and you go to receive them in the airport, and there are some of my relatives who are coming in the same flight and I'm going to receive them from the airport. So if someone asks that who all came, then it is understood, then I will give the names of those people whom I went to receive, because others I don't know who they are. Similarly, you would describe those whom you went to receive and you would not know the names of my relatives, so you would not share name. So when we read these 2 descriptions of who all came in the flight, your description and my description will be different, because your description will be based on whom you know and my descriptions would be based on whom I know. So therefore so these kind of details should not be the basis of deciding whether it is the same universal form or different. But what actually we should see is there is some similarity, very foundational similarity that is there in the description of the universal form in Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. That is the mention that in that form one could see whatever existed in the past, whatever existed in the future, and whatever exists in the present. There is a verse which says like that. And there are multiple verses in Srimad Bhagavatam where this description is there. This universal form covered whatever existed in the past, whatever would exist in the future, and whatever exists right now. Yad bhutam yaccha bhavyam utamritatva sheshanaha yadannena tirohati, says Purusha Sukta. Similar description comes in Bhagavatam also, and similar description comes in Bhagavad Gita also. So this is so if you had asked me, which was the what was the color of the flight, if that was a question asked, what was the color of the flight and what time it landed, what is the number of the flight, what was the airlines, if those details you had asked, I think both of our description of that flight would have been same.
Yeah.
But we asked for a different detail. So those details will not, because that description of the universal form was being narrated by Sanjaya to Dhritarashtra. So then naturally he will say, oh, Duryodhana, Karna, and everyone is found, is getting crushed in between the teeth of the universal form. Because that does not mean that others were not there in that universal form. It's just that familiar figures, common, people whom commonly both of them knew, their names are given, that's all.
So just different angles of vision depending upon the purpose for which the universal form is being described.
Yeah.
And so same goes for, I don't know if you mentioned this universal form today, but the same goes for that, what is normally referred to as the allegorical universal form, where, the mountains are described as some part of Krishna's body, and the rivers are described as some other part of Krishna's body. That also would be a different perspective of the same form that was
it's imaginary. It's just imaginary, Mataji. It's just like I'll give you some carrots, some peas, some shredded cabbage, some what else, some beans, finely cut beans. Then I give you all of that and I tell you, can you make Krishna out of it? So if someone has that really artistic sense, they can put all of that together and make it look like Krishna, right? And you can say, oh, here is Krishna. Oh, Krishna has carrots as his hands and peas as his hair and things like that. But you can make Krishna that way and depict Krishna that way, but in reality Krishna does not have all of that as his bodily parts. So similarly, it is definitely allegorical, metaphorical description, but it helps particular class of people who cannot imagine an ordinary cowherd boy to be the lord of this whole universe. For them to visualize a person possessing all these limbs is useful for his meditation, and it's helpful for him to give up his selfish attitude and enjoying tendency in this material world for that purpose.
Yeah, okay, Prabhu. I mean, I know other people have questions, but just to clarify this point, though, because I'm there are those who definitely say that there is a universal form that is like an actual form, and they distinguish that between this allegorical form. They see one as actual and one as just, metaphorical.
There is no actual form like that, Mataji.
Oh my goodness.
That's my understanding. I've heard what you're telling.
Who have said this, huh? You've heard this also, no?
I've heard this, but I have not read this.
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm not crazy, because if you've heard it, then I'm happy to know that you've heard it, because I've heard this in lectures also, that there is the allegorical form, and then there is the actual form. I forget which one the Virat Rupa is. The Virat Rupa is that.
I mean, the Virat Rupa and the Vishwa Rupa. I mean, the point is, Mataji, I mean, there's an actual form, means there is an actual form of the universe. But is there actually a personality who has these planets as his bodily parts? That is an imagination that is very clearly mentioned in the Shastras.
Okay, but which one refers to the Virat Rupa and which one refers to the Vishwa Rupa?
Both are the same. And I have seen Acharyas use both these terminologies interchangeably.
Okay.
So I have not come
Okay.
across. Yeah, I've heard it though many times, but I don't remember studying it anywhere, reading it anywhere. I did a search, but I could not find
Okay, well,
any
very
clear
good.
presentation like that.
Well, I'm glad that you've said that you've heard it many times, because now I feel validated. I didn't just dream this up. So
Yeah.
thank you, Prabhu. I mean, I have other questions, but I know other people do too. So thank you so much, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Gail Mataji. Your questions are always very beautiful and to the topic. Thank you so much, Gail Mataji. Tiffany Mataji, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for such a wonderful, wonderful class. So grateful for your association. My question is kind of following up to what Gail Mataji and what you were just speaking of. In light of everything that you just said, and also your comment about the universal form for Vaishnavas means the universe, how do we understand what Arjuna saw in the 11th chapter? What
did he see exactly?
Well, we have the descriptions of the heads and and everything going into Krishna's mouth and all of that. But what does that represent then? Well,
that represents the nature of time. It's called the Kala Rupa.
Okay.
So I'll let me ask you something, Mataji. If something is, can you see something that is illusory?
No, not with my eyes. No.
Are you sure?
You're supposed to say yes, Tiffany. You're supposed to say yes.
I'm trying to think of examples of things.
Okay,
like a mirage,
let me ask you something.
Like water in a desert.
Okay.
What about a mirage? Okay, have you ever been to a 3D movie? I mean, not
yeah.
after becoming a
Okay.
devotee, yeah,
Okay.
right? In a 3D movie, they give you a glass, right? 3D glasses, and suddenly you think, there is a cake that is right in front of you. There is, there are some chocolates, and then you see one who is not wearing glasses. He's seeing everyone like, trying to grab something, but he's wondering, what are they trying to grab? There is nothing there. And then someone says, you put on your glasses now. And he puts on his glasses, and suddenly he sees a big piece of cake right in front of him, right? He's seeing it, but it is an illusion, right? So even in the material world, ordinary people can create such illusion by making you see something which does not actually illusory. So why can't Krishna create something like that? So just because Arjuna saw it does not necessarily mean there is actually a personality standing there with all that.
Okay. Thank you. That clears up so much for me. I appreciate it. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Tiffany Mataji. Saroja Mataji, please go ahead with your question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you very much for your enlightening class. Pranam, All Glories to Srila Prabhupada. I just wanted to let you know that I felt a lot of relief when I heard that, it's not so easy to understand some of the pastimes of Krishna, especially when I read or hear pastimes about Radharani, Krishna, and gopis. I always feel that I'm not able to understand the subject matter fully. Although, some devotees give in lectures, they quote some pastimes about some intimate pastimes between Radharani, Krishna, and gopis. I feel that I'm still not able to relate to it, and I feel some shortness of understanding. So I felt some relief when I heard that, they're not really easy to understand. And another thing I wanted to clarify my understanding about when you said that the emotions, the spiritual emotions are similar to material emotions, but they are on a different platform. Is it something like, when we say that love can only be to Krishna, love in this material world is not real, it is only towards Krishna. when we say that, it is not exactly that we don't understand what love is, because love is kind of synonymous with selflessness or sacrifice. So we see that in the material world, especially in relationships like mother and son or mother and daughter, that a mother's love is always very selfless and she sacrifices a lot. So we understand what love is. But of course, in the material world, they tend to misuse this word in so many other contexts. They don't understand the real meaning of love. But when we understand that kind of a love, that in those relationships that are purely selfless, we can extend that a little bit to understand how the spiritual prema will be, right?
To some extent, yes. In the spiritual emotions and material emotions, in this case love, they are different in two ways. Generally, one is very explicit, another maybe little bit not so explicit. One is material love is on the platform of false ego. It's on the it's on the bodily platform. Even though it may be selfless, it is selfless without a proper understanding of what the true self is. Right? But spiritual love is on the platform of true ego. Jivera Swarup Hoy Krishnera Nityadas. Right? And another difference is that material emotions are generally and mostly for Atmendriya Priti, for gratifying one's own senses, even though it may be for helping that person, for making the other person happy, but there is some gratification that we get towards our senses also. And you cannot, probably, as you said, between mother and son or mother and daughter, it may not be so much Atmendriya Priti, but certainly the first case, however selfless it may be, but material relationships are on the platform of false ego and not true ego. So that is one very prominent difference. But in most of the other relationships, they are mostly for Atmendriya Priti, for own gratification. But spiritual emotions are for Krishnendriya Priti, or as Rupa Goswami says, Krishna Saukyartam Eva Kevalam Udyama. Every endeavor is purely for the pleasure of Krishna and for not one's own pleasure, like that.
Yeah, that is true, Prabhu. I understand, but I was just trying to see if we can, understand from this selflessness of this relationship, we will be able to understand at least a little bit of, how the real.
There are, if material emotions and spiritual emotions had nothing in common, then we can never understand spiritual emotions.
Yeah.
It's not like that. They have a lot in common, especially in their external form. They have a lot in common. So that's why Srila Rupa Goswami says, Yuvatinam yata yoni yunam cha yuvatau yata manobhiramate tadvad manobhiramatam tvai. He says, my dear Krishna, just like a young woman gets attracted to a young man, and similarly a young man gets attracted to a young woman, may my attraction be very steadfastly be attracted to you, like that, he says. So so it is there. There is similarity. If not, then how would he compare attraction between a man and a woman to attraction between a Jiva and Krishna? So if there was no similarity, there's definitely similarity, but we have to see what sense. In this case, the sense of intensity, the intensity of that attraction is quite intense like that. There are so many other similarities.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu, for clarifying. I just wanted to understand that, when you were talking about Purusha avatars and Leela avatars, so there is some hope that we will be able to understand these intimate pastimes also one day with the constant reading of.
Yeah, definitely, but not but not prematurely. We have to work for it. We have to earn it.
The Leela avatars and other pastimes? That's what was explained in
No,
the.
by making spiritual progress,
Okay.
by actually making spiritual progress. When the more and more anarthas get cleansed of our heart, and the more we develop love towards Krishna, to that extent we'll understand. Vishaya chadiya kabe shuddha habe man, tabe hama herabo Shri Vrindavan. So in order to truly understand, to the extent our heart gets cleansed of the material attachments, to that extent we can understand spiritual attachments.
Okay. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Saroja Mataji. Prabhu, do you have more time, Prabhuji? Because there are a few.
In exactly another 12 minutes, I have my next class starting. I can take one more question.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Gail Mataji, you have another question?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, one second. I have sent one question in the chat, Prabhu. That was Megha Mataji's question. Would you like to address?
Okay, let me check, Mataji. Whose question? About reading these technical topics a prerequisite to understand spiritual emotions. Is that one, Mataji?
Yes,
Is
Prabhuji.
that, yeah. Is reading these technical topics the prerequisite to understand spiritual emotions? Is there another way to understand spiritual emotions? Well, to understand spiritual emotions, we may not need to read these technical sections, but when we read these technical sections and understand who is that personality who is crawling in Vrindavan, who is drinking milk from his mother's breast, who is stealing the gopis' clothes, we cannot take that personality to be ordinary unless we absorb ours in exactly understanding who this personality is. Then we may take it very cheaply. So it's not, you will certainly not understand spiritual emotions by reading these technical topics, but you will certainly be able to distinguish material emotions and spiritual emotions by properly absorbing ourselves in these technical topics. Of course, I didn't get time to cover this part properly, but there are many other slides where I have discussed these topics. Maybe some other day I will touch upon it.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
There is another question in chat box from Anand Vilas Prabhuji. Prabhu, you gave us beautiful key points. My question is that, is it the correct understanding that all those emotions we have are perverted reflection of spiritual world? And second is, and we underestimate our conditioning?
Yeah, in one sense, yes. They are definitely perverted reflection material of the spiritual emotions. If not, otherwise, there is nothing in this material world which has its independent existence from, either things or emotions in the spiritual world. So definitely material emotions have their root in the original spiritual emotions in the spiritual world, but it is just in a perverted form. I think I need to end here because
Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandot Pranam. Wonderful, wonderful class, Prabhuji. And all your classes are very unique. Every time you bring some new topic and we get so much absorbed in that, we don't realize how the time flies away, So thank you so much, Prabhuji. And very sorry we cannot give more time to you.
I'm sorry for taking so much of your time, Madhu.
So true, Mataji, so true. Very beautiful class.
Thank you.
Prabhuji, we look forward for your association again. We'll let you go now because we know other devotees are waiting for your next class. So dear devotees, let us pay our obeisances to Prabhuji. Vancha kalapataru veshacha kripa sindhu vacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ji ki jai. His Grace Balaram Shakti Prabhu ki jai.
Hare
All the assembled
Krishna.
devotees.
Thank you so
Thank you so much,
So
Prabhuji.
wonderful to be in all of your classes. Thank you
for your
so
time
much.
and for your services. Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank you, dear devotees, for joining and for staying with us. We'll end the call here and please join back tomorrow for another wonderful session.